Have you ever stood on the edge of a Carpathian ridge and felt the wind speak? Not just blow, speak. As if the mountains themselves were whispering secrets. Old as time. Older than gods. In the heart of Ukraine, beyond the beaten trails and postcard views, lies a world few dare to name aloud. A land of fog-covered peaks, sudden storms, and ancient memory. A place where reality thins. And the old ones still listen. They are not priests. They are not shamans. They are not witches. They are Molfars. Keepers of balance. Masters of storm. Healers, and sometimes, executioners. They do not advertise their power. They do not ask for followers. They simply are, like the mountain, unmoving, silent, dangerous. The word Molfar doesn't exist in any mainstream Western belief. It cannot be translated properly. It is not magician. It is not sorcerer. It is something else. A role. A weight. A legacy that cannot be taught, only received. Molfars are born. Or perhaps chosen. And when they die, sometimes, the forest sighs. In Carpathian villages, you don't ask if Molfars exist. You ask where they are. And how to avoid offending them. Because to cross one means more than bad luck. It means waking to find your cows dead. It means hail flattening only your field. It means something watching you through the trees at night. And not blinking. For centuries, their names were never written. Their rituals, never recorded. But everyone knew. They could stop the rain. Or call it. They could heal a dying child. Or place a curse so silent, you wouldn't even realize you were fading. Until it was too late. And the most dangerous thing? Not all Molfars walk in the light. There are those who whisper to darker forces. Who ask the mountains not for permission, but for power. And they pay in blood. In the village of Verkhney, a man once claimed he saw a Molfar summon a storm to strike down a liar. The thunder came not from the sky, but from the ground. In Kryvyi, people still speak of the last great Molfar, Mikhailo Nechai. A man who spoke to the winds like friends. A healer. A protector. Stabbed to death in 2011. They say when he died, the clouds did not move for 3 days. And then, it rained. And rained. And rained. This story is not about folklore. This story is not about superstition. This story is about power. The kind of power that doesn't need a stage. The kind that watches from a hut in the woods. With silent eyes. Molfars are not fantasy. They were real. They are real. Hidden. Scattered. Listening. And if you think they've vanished, then you haven't been in the Carpathians lately. You haven't seen the crosses of dried herbs over doorways. You haven't heard the wind change direction without warning. You haven't looked into a villager's eyes when they say, "Don't go past that hill. Not after sunset." This film will take you deep into that mist. Into the forgotten paths. Into names that were never meant to be spoken aloud. We will walk beside light and shadow. We will open the door to an ancient pact. Between man and mountain. Are you ready to step into the fog? Because once you do, you may never come out the same. The Carpathians are not merely mountains. They are memory carved into stone. They are breath wrapped in forest and fog. They are a living presence, ancient, wild, and watching. Long before borders, maps, or names, these lands pulsed with something unseen. A rhythm felt in bone rather than heard by ear. Here, power didn't reside in cities or crowns. It lived in wind, water, fire, and root. And those who listened, truly listened, became its keepers. They were not called priests, nor were they named sages. They were something else entirely. They were Molfars, born from silence, tempered by solitude, marked not by title, but by the mountain itself. Some say the first Molfars were chosen by the land. Others whisper that the stars named them long before their birth. But none deny that their power came from places most dare not tread. Villagers would speak of a child who never cried during thunderstorms, who stared too long into flames, who walked into the forest alone and returned changed. These were signs, omens, clues that the mountain had claimed another voice. A Molfar's journey never began in comfort. It started with illness, with fever, with dreams so vivid they burned through reality. Those who survived the sickness were not the same. Their gaze deepened. Their speech grew sparse. They began to feel things others could not explain. And when the elders noticed, they would take the child away. Not to a school, but to the forest. There, beneath the canopy of towering fir and ancient oak, the teaching began. No blackboards, no lessons, only silence, and the slow revealing of patterns. The movement of crows before a storm, the way herbs bend under the moonlight, the smell of snow before it falls. The forest does not explain. It shows. And Molfars learned to see. They watched animals die and return in ritual. They listened to streams for answers. They buried offerings in ash and bone. Some never returned. The forest took them, or they lost themselves within it. But those who did return, returned as something more. Their touch calmed cattle. Their glance could still a quarrel. And their voice, when used, could summon or silence the wind. There are stories, too many to count. A Molfar who healed a boy struck by lightning, by whispering into a pine cone. Another who knew a man would die weeks before the fever came, just by touching his shirt. And others, darker tales, of men who dared insult a Molfar and were found speechless the next day. But where did it all begin? Before the stories? Before the names? Some believe the origins of the Molfars lie in the ancient firekeepers of the Slavs, the Folkvi, who read the stars and walked with wolves. Others say they are older still, descendants of the Aryan wanderers, those who mapped the heavens on cave walls and traced spirals into clay. There are even whispers that the Molfars came not from the earth, but from the mist, that they are what remains of the mountain's first children, neither dead nor living, just listening. What unites all these legends is one truth. Molfars were never made by man. They were drawn out of the world by forces that cannot be tamed. Some Molfars followed the path of healing. White Molfars, guardians, listeners. They spoke with herbs. They treated soul sickness. They warned of floods, of frost, of war. Others chose the darker path. The Black Molfars. They spoke to shadows, used rusted nails, blood, and bone. Their power fed on fear, and fear was always near. Villagers feared both, respected both, but would never confuse the two. There are tales of black Molfars who would trap spirits in bottles, Others who cursed entire harvests with a glance. Some who could kill a man with a whisper carried on smoke. But white or black, both walked the same line. The line between worlds. The line that divides what is seen and what is felt. Molfars didn't worship gods. They negotiated with them. Bartered. Demanded. They left offerings not out of devotion, but agreement. The land gave power, but it asked for something in return. Solitude. Discipline. Sacrifice. To be a Molfar meant living at the edge. Neither fully in this world, nor out of it. They lived alone. Not always physically, but spiritually. Even in the center of the village, a Molfar stood apart. Eyes on something distant. Ears turned to voices others could not hear. And always, there was silence. Not the silence of peace. The silence before something arrives. The kind that hums under your skin. If you ever meet a true Molfar, you will know. Not because they tell you, but because everything inside you will say, this one knows things you should not ask about. To this day, there are families who believe the gift still runs in their blood. That somewhere, buried in their lineage, is the spark of that old knowing. They speak to their children in hushed tones. They keep dried herbs in jars no one opens. They never leave mirrors uncovered at night. The old ways are not gone. Just sleeping. Waiting for the mountain to call once more. And when it does, a child will be born with stormlight in their eyes, and silence in their breath. And the Molfars will rise again. In every generation, there is one who carries the silence differently. One who doesn't just know the old ways, but becomes them. In the Carpathians, that one was Mikailo Nechai. Molfar, healer, stormcaller, and the last man in modern times to be called, with reverence and fear, a living legend. They called him the White One, not for his hair, but for the kind of power he chose to use. Light over shadow, healing over harm. But even light, in the mountains, casts long and dangerous shadows. He was born in 1920, in the village of Verkhny Yasenev, deep in the Hutzal region of the Carpathians. A place of steep slopes, deep valleys, and stories that do not end. Even as a child, Nechai was not like the others. Quiet. Thoughtful. More comfortable in the forest than among people. He saw things others didn't. Felt things others ignored. And the elders noticed. They whispered, "This boy has the wind in his blood." And so began a life both powerful and perilous. The life of a Molfar. He did not learn in universities. His classroom was the forest. His teachers, the elders, the spirits, the wind. He walked paths that had no names. He memorized the songs of birds, the taste of herbs in winter, the way fire cracks when a storm is coming. And in time, he became feared. Not because he harmed, but because people knew he could. Nechai could heal wounds with herbs and words. He could break fevers with steam and prayer. He could read signs in the clouds, warn of deaths before they happened, protect crops with whispered chants at sunrise. Women would walk for days to see him. Children were brought to his door at midnight. Soldiers, drunk with trauma, would leave his hut trembling and whole. He used no machines, no textbooks, only what was passed down. in the bones of the mountains, in the dreams of those who listened. He did not charge money. He asked for offerings. A candle, a thread, a loaf of bread. He did not serve for gain. He served because he was. And for decades, he lived like this. Simple. Solitary. Surrounded by fog and forest. And whispers. But then, the world found him. Journalists. Curious minds. Skeptics. TV crews. They came, not always with respect. They wanted to see a wizard. They wanted proof, spectacle, entertainment. And Nechai, soft-spoken and calm, stood at the edge of their world like a stone. He did not seek attention, but neither did he hide. He spoke in proverbs, answered with questions, smiled like someone who knew. They wouldn't understand anyway. He warned them. The earth speaks. The forest watches. Not everything should be touched. Some laughed. Others felt chills. He predicted weather better than meteorologists. He healed those medicine had abandoned. He knew when to say, "I cannot help. This one belongs to death already." He did not fear death. He understood it. And then, in 2011, he was murdered. Stabbed. Not by a demon. Not by a curse. But by a man. A madman, they said. A religious fanatic. But in the mountains, no one believed that was the full truth. How can you kill a Molfar? They asked. Unless it was time. The moment he died, clouds gathered. It rained for 3 days. Animals in the village refused to eat. Women reported dreams of fire and cracking ice. And some say, to this day, his hut has not rotted. Others say his soul never left the mountain, that it simply moved into the mist. You see, a Molfar does not just live. He anchors something. A balance. A thread between the seen and unseen. And when that thread breaks, strange things begin to happen. After Nechai's death, people said the storms changed. Unseasonal weather. Sudden sicknesses. Children talking in their sleep about the man in white. The mountains were mourning, and so were the people. But what made Nechai powerful was not his rituals, not his herbs, not even his predictions. It was his presence. He carried something older than words. A feeling that the world was not empty, that the forest watches, that the land remembers. That magic, true magic, is quiet, patient, and terrifying. And now, he is gone. But the echo remains. Ask anyone from Verkhnyasenev. They'll tell you. He wasn't just a man. He was the mountain speaking through flesh. Some say a new Molfar will rise. That Nechai passed his gift. His burden. To someone no one expects. A child. A wanderer. Maybe even a skeptic. But others say the line is broken. And without him, the Carpathians are no longer guarded. Just waiting. Waiting to be heard again. The Carpathians are not just a place. They are a living ritual. A ceremony written into stone and mist. A land where magic is not performed, but absorbed. To understand Molfar magic, you must first abandon everything you think you know about spells. This is not fantasy. This is not theater. This is life and death measured by whispers and breath. There are no wands. No potions in glass. Only things you walk past every day. That in the hands of a Molfar become instruments of ancient power. A stone. A knife. A strand of hair. Ash from a funeral fire. Let us begin with the simplest rituals. Protection. Every Molfar begins here. Before they can heal. Before they can summon. They must learn to protect. A child marked for darkness is first taught how to create a circle of salt and iron. Salt for purity. Iron for grounding. Together, they repel wandering spirits and the gaze of those who see too much. Then comes smoke. The burning of herbs. Not incense, never that. But wormwood, juniper, St. John's wort. Each with purpose. Wormwood for breaking curses. Juniper for summoning ancestral voices. St. John's wort for light against the shadow. A Molfar burns them in silence. No chance. No drama. Just intention. Because intention is everything. Then there is water. The source of life. And the mirror of fate. A ritual performed on the night of Kapala involves taking water from 3 different streams before dawn, without being seen. This water is used for scrying. A bowl placed under moonlight. A candle lit. And then you watch. Images form. Sometimes clear. Sometimes abstract. But always meaningful. To the one who knows how to read. A black thread, soaked in wax and tied around the left wrist, was believed to repel envy. And in more extreme cases, a silver pin, blessed under a blood moon, was hidden inside clothing for protection against black Molfars. Yes, there were those who walked the other path. The forbidden path. While white Molfars healed, black Molfars hunted. Their rituals were darker, more dangerous, and always paid in pain. They worked with objects others feared to touch. Cemetery soil. Hair from the dead. Knives never used for food. They performed Zamavlianya. Spoken spells passed only through breath. Never written. And always carried a cost. These spells were used to bind. To curse. To twist fate. A man once accused of betrayal woke each night at 2:17 a.m. 4 months. No sound. No dreams. Just a presence. No doctor could explain it. Only when a hidden charm was found under his doorstep. A feather wrapped in string, soaked in wine and spit. Did the waking stop? Coincidence? Not here. There is also the ritual of mirror freezing. A black Molfar would take a mirror, leave it outside on a winter night, sprinkle ash upon it, and say the name of the target. If the reflection cracked, misfortune would follow. Some Molfars claimed they could cause miscarriage by burying dolls sewn from pigskin and filled with grave wax. Others claimed they could curse bloodlines, not just individuals. And yet, most Molfars, even dark ones, held to a code. They would not interfere without cause. Because to manipulate fate invites fate to look back. More subtle magic lived in daily rituals. Bread never cut at night. Clothes never washed on certain moons. A bowl of milk left for house spirits. These were not superstitions. They were agreements. Do not offend the world, a Molfar would say, because it is always watching. Dreams were another tool. Molfars trained themselves to dream lucidly, to walk between the trees of sleep, and gather information. They believed dreams were meetings with ancestors, with watchers, with echoes of the future. Sometimes, they awoke with answers. Other times, they woke weeping. There were rites too sacred to speak of. One known only as the turning was said to be performed only once in a Molfar's life, to either ascend fully or lose the gift forever. It involved fire, a name, and a sacrifice not always symbolic. No one speaks of what it requires, only that those who pass it are never the same. One white Molfar, before his death, was asked if he feared what waited beyond. He smiled, placed his palm on the earth, and said, "There is no beyond, only more forest." And then he died. Molfar magic is not magic in the Western sense. It is a relationship with place, with silence, with everything that breathes, but has no mouth. Even now, in remote Carpathian villages, people place iron scissors under the pillow. When their children are sick, they do not call the doctor first. They call the one who knows the words. And still, there are things that remain forbidden. There are songs not to be sung, trees not to be cut, questions not to be asked after dusk, because some forces respond to the wrong kind of attention, and the line between asking and awakening is very, very thin. There are places in the Carpathians that do not appear on maps, not because cartographers missed them, but because the land refused to be drawn. Villagers know where these places are. They will not take you there. They will not speak of them, especially not at night. And if you insist, they will look away and simply say, "Some things are not meant to be found." This is not folklore. This is not legend. This is what remains. After the last Molfars fell silent, since the death of Molfar Nechai in 2011, something has changed in the mountains. People say the weather speaks differently. The fog stays longer. The paths feel unfamiliar. Tourists disappear. Locals vanish. And those who return are not always whole. Let's begin with the story of Polanina Velika, a meadow high in the ridges near the Romanian border. Beautiful, isolated, deadly. In 2013, two hikers, experienced, well-equipped, vanished without a trace. The search lasted 3 weeks. Nothing. No gear. No clothes. No signal. Until one day, a single boot was found. Perfectly upright. Clean. As if someone had placed it there. Next to it, a mirror. Not a pocket mirror. A full-length wooden-framed mirror, half buried in moss. There was no explanation. The case was closed. But those who searched refused to ever return to that spot. They said the silence felt too loud, like someone or something was listening. Then there's the tale of Yavernik, an abandoned hamlet hidden behind dense pine. Locals say it was once home to 7 families. One winter, after a particularly harsh storm, Supplies were late. When volunteers arrived in spring, the village was empty. No signs of struggle. No bodies. Just candles. All burned halfway down. And one thing more. On each doorstep, a symbol had been drawn. A circle with 3 lines inside. No one knew what it meant. But the elders paled. They said it hadn't been seen since the war, and that it wasn't a human sign. Some believed the people of Yavornik were taken. Others believed they walked away, following something that called them. No one rebuilt the village. The trees grew back. And now, even the animals avoid it. Then, there are the moving trails. Hikers report familiar paths becoming strange. Rocks where there were none. A stream running the wrong direction. Landmarks vanished. Some say this is disorientation. Others say the forest rearranges itself. Not to trap, but to protect something. To keep it hidden. And there is always that same feeling. Being watched. Not by animals. Not by people. By something. Older. The locals call them Shkodivliatasia. The Watchers. Not ghosts. Not demons. Not protectors. Something in between. There are hundreds of stories. People walking alone. And suddenly hearing 2 sets of footsteps. Whispers in languages no one speaks. Children waking up with pine needles in their beds after never leaving the house. One woman claimed she saw her husband twice. Once chopping wood, and once staring at her through the window at the same time. She left the village the next day. But what ties all these events together? The absence of Molfars. When the balance was kept. When the old words were spoken. The land was calm. Predictable in its mystery. Now, the threads are loose. Some believe the mountains are calling for guardians. Others believe the Watchers are taking their place. But Watchers do not protect humans. They protect the border between the seen and the not yet seen. The line that Molfars once walked. And if no one walks it now, what crosses over? There is also a story. Not old. Not from a forgotten time. It happened in 2022. A photographer came to the mountains, chasing beauty. He wandered far, chasing fog and sunrise. He found a trail not marked on any GPS. It felt right. He followed it. 4 hours. Then, his phone died. His compass spun. And the air changed. He reported feeling like he was underwater. Heavy. Muted. He turned back, only to find the trail behind him was gone. What he saw next, he refuses to speak about. Only that he was seen. Not watched. Seen. He was found 2 days later. By a hunter. Silent. Eyes wide. No shoes. Camera. Gone. He left the Carpathians. And never touched a forest again. We don't tell these stories to scare. We tell them because they're true. Something is stirring. The balance is broken. The old paths are reopening. But not all doors lead forward. And not everything that steps through wants to be known. Are the Watchers returning? Or did they never leave? Some say the next Molfar has already been born. that the mountains never leave themselves undefended. And that child, or wanderer, or lost soul, is now being tested, silently, by storm, by hunger, by shadow. And when the time comes, they will know the old names. They will hear the wind speak, and they will answer. Because if they don't, something else will. The wind no longer whispers. It waits. Still. Not because the mountains are silent, but because they are listening. Something is changing. Something is waking. And the old names, the ones carved into bark and bone, are being spoken again. So what happens? If the Molfars return, not as ghosts, not as memory, but as breath, as will. What happens when the balance is restored? But the world no longer understands balance? Can modern minds, with screens and cities, make room for those who speak in smoke and moss? Can science measure the weight of silence on the back of an old man? Who knows which star to follow? When a child won't wake up, the return of the Molfars is not a fantasy. It is a pattern, a correction. Nature does not allow emptiness. When one force dies, another is born. So the question is not if they return. The question is, how will we receive them? Will we call them liars? Frauds? Will we ask for proof, as if thunder answers questions? Or will we remember? Will we sit in stillness, with open palms and closed mouths, and simply allow them to speak? Because the Molfars were never performers. They were bridges between what is seen and what watches the scene. If they return, the world will not explode. It will shift. Storms may come harder, but healing will come deeper. The land will speak, and someone will finally listen. But it will not be easy. The dark will rise too. For every white Molfar, there is one who walks the shadow path. Balance requires both. And so the question sharpens. If they come back, who will follow them? Will it be the forgotten sons of the mountains? The wanderers who never found home in the cities? Will it be children who talk to birds and cry when the trees are cut? Or will it be you? Will you hear something deep inside when the clouds begin to circle and the wind smells of fern and thunder? Will you feel something in your bones when the silence of the mountains presses down? Not with fear, but with recognition. Because if the Molfars return, they won't come to teach. They'll come to protect the land, the threads, the doors. They will close what must remain closed and open what must rise again. And you will have a choice: to ignore, to laugh, to forget, or to remember that long before words, before gods, before time, there were watchers, and those who spoke with them were called Molfars. They never left. They were just waiting. And now, the waiting is almost over.